What is up, everybody? Solomon here. We do have a great video for you guys today. I have Brad Cam, who is the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder of Unstoppable Domains. Many of you in the XRP community may have heard of that. Obviously, it's part of the PayID initiative, and they are definitely doing some cool stuff over at Unstoppable Domains. So thank you for being on, Brad. I really, really appreciate it, and I think digital asset community as a whole will appreciate learning a little bit more about what you guys are doing. So.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, all right, I guess just to get a little bit started, as far as a background in yourself, how long have you been in the blockchain space?
So I moved to San Francisco in 2012 to work on a non-blockchain related startup, a marketing tech company. But I moved into this house called 20 Mission, and it was like a Bitcoin hacker house in 2013. So I think the second exchange in the US was launched in the basement of the building. I believe the first meetups of Bitcoin in San Francisco were in the basement of the building as well.
Okay.
Vitalik Buterin gave a talk before Ethereum was launched in our courtyard. So basically, like, everybody I met when I moved to San Francisco was some kind of a crypto fanatic.
Yeah.
And so I got into it somewhere around that time, 2013, started buying, started following it, started playing around, but it was more like a, nights and weekends thing. I wasn't really doing anything active until this company, until Unstoppable.
I was actually just talking to my buddy. I was in the Navy and was in San Diego for 4 years, and he lived with another guy in the barracks back in like 2010, 2011, and they came and the barracks people came and talked to him because I guess his friend was mining Bitcoin. They're like, what are you doing in here? Like, why is your electricity bill a little bit higher than everybody else's? But I mean, it just goes to show, there were people involved in this space way back then. I know for myself, I didn't get involved until like the very beginning of 2017. And everything was so new to me. And, I think some of the initiatives, and I'm very excited to hear about what you guys are doing, I think solve a lot of the pain points as far as simplification and adoption is concerned. So if you could, I try to keep everything as simple as possible on this channel. Can you just provide a little bit of a background, maybe about how Unstoppable Domains began, the idea, and how it's come through to fruition, and just a very basic, kind of like a mission statement for what you guys are trying to accomplish?
Yeah. So our mission is to onboard the world to the decentralized web. And I say decentralized web because the regular web is super centralized. And the way it works right now is if I want to get a domain name, then GoDaddy stores it for me.
Yep.
And if I want to build a website, then Amazon Web Services stores that for me. Or if I put up video, then YouTube is going to store that. And because of that system, it means that all of those companies can take down your website, can take down your content, get to decide what you're allowed to publish, what you're not allowed to publish. And, maybe in the US, that's not great, but it's not the end of the world. But the majority of the world lives in a place where if they say something that doesn't agree with the local political powers, that website's gone.
Yep.
That's most of the world. So the reason why we're working on this is because we want the technology to not have any opinion on what you publish, that you decide and you're in control. So it's a big shift in the way that the internet works. So that's what we're trying to do. And crypto has a lot of pieces that also benefit from this. So for example, what we built is we built domain names. So we have our own domain registry called .crypto. The idea is that it will eventually be able to do everything that a .com domain will be able to do, plus a lot more.
Okay.
So I've got Brad.crypto. I've got my Bitcoin address, my Ethereum address, my Ripple address, my Litecoin address, all of my crypto addresses attached to this one domain. You can just type in Brad.crypto into a wallet and pay me. So it hides all of those long addresses that are like absurdly hard to remember and absurdly hard to deal with. And if you've got 10 different addresses or 50 different addresses, doesn't matter. Yep. You can just tell me Brad.crypto, nice and simple. The same domain, Brad.crypto, is also my website. I've got a website up on decentralized storage. No one can take it down but me. I've got a blog up there right now, Brad.crypto, so you can also check that out. And you can message me in a way that's encrypted that someone like Facebook can't read my messages.
Are you guys, I know there's so many initiatives out there. I guess to start, and I don't want to lose my pace of thought here. Is there, moving along with that, saying that, the .crypto, the blockchain domains can do everything as a .com. Are you guys planning on integrating with, something like Coil, which is, trying to work on micropayments for browsing content and media and everything else? Or, even I know Hedera Hashgraph is doing something similar to that as well, because I guess that's the first part. And then second, from a peer-to-peer standpoint, I see that there could be a lot of potential for something like what you guys are doing once it gets built up, where it doesn't necessarily have to be peer-to-peer at all. It could be peer-to-business, whatever. If I have a utility company and I'm paying my gas bills, my utility company uses something similar to what you guys are doing, and you can pay with crypto, and it increases liquidity across the board.
Yeah, so I think that's in general what you get from a blockchain domain is you get the ability to roll up all of these networks into one thing. So like the big advantage here is I've got Brad.crypto. If I want to send money via Hedera, I can do that through the domain. If I want to send money via Ripple network, if I want to send money via Bitcoin network or Ethereum network, it doesn't matter. I can do it all with this domain name. I just need to attach my domain name to those networks. So it's universal in this way. Like you can receive any crypto. One of the reasons why we've been working with the PayID group is because PayID has this idea of trying to get traditional financial institutions to point things like your bank and wire information or your IBAN info or whatever. So what you're going to get in the end is exactly what you said, this crypto to business, business to crypto, whatever, where I can use this one domain name and then someone can send me a wire.
Yeah.
So all of this rolling up, and crypto allows us to do this, to make it so we can roll up the traditional financial methods of sending money, as well as the crypto methods, all into one thing.
I think it's fascinating. I talk sometimes. People think people thought I was nuts 3 or 4 years ago when I'm talking about what's going to be happening, and we can see that it's from a government standpoint, it's a little bit slow, but from an innovation standpoint, there's more innovation right now than there has ever been, and I'm sure I could say this in 2 years from now. I'll say the same thing. But the interesting thing to me, and I think where all this leads up is, the liquidity that's going to be available to everybody. If you own a fractional portion of a painting or whatever, or real estate or whatever, and you're at the grocery store and you realize, this account doesn't have enough money to pay for my groceries, I can sell it, transfer it, and everything. Even, siloed systems are going to all be talking, and it's coming a lot quicker than I think a lot of people realize.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, so I do have some questions in here. So I know that you did just touch on PayID. Is the relationship that Unstoppable Domains has and all the other organizations that are in the PayID initiative, there's obviously a shared vision. Would you call it like somewhat of like a quasi partnership, or are you all operating under the same standard? I'm just curious, like what ties all these organizations together?
So PayID is a specific standard that allows any company to spin up a server, store information, and use that standard so that somebody could type in a PayID in order to send someone money. So it's a system of you can find any partner, any like company that you want to trust to spin up a server and store your payment information for you. And so it's the standard for companies to be able to do that for you. It's a little bit different than the way a blockchain domain works, where you're relying on the blockchain itself. You're not relying on a company to store the information for you. Mm-hmm. So the reason there's a piece of this that PayID is doing with its partners that maybe is not as directly related to what we're doing, but the piece that is directly related to what we're doing, and the reason why we integrated with PayID is because if you want to store your bank information or whatever, you need to do that with a company that you trust. You don't want to put that info on the blockchain. Yeah. So that's the advantage. That's a piece of the PayID puzzle that we're not trying to solve. And so what we did is we pointed domain names to your PayID. So when you set up your PayID with the banking information, then your PayID is also attached. So as PayID builds up this network of information and these trusted parties, our domain users will be able to benefit from that too. We'll be able to use that along with their domain names.
Okay.
So I would see it as kind of like parallel efforts where PayID is a little bit more focused on kind of more traditional companies, and where we started kind of more from this like, hardcore crypto user side, and slowly as everything converges, they're coming together. And ultimately, one is we want all these payment systems to be attached to each other. Like having crypto stuff over here and banking stuff over here, not what the user wants.
Yeah.
So long answer, but it's like we're going on these roads like this, and we're kind of going in this direction.
I mean, I've seen similar things, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but it seems to me like what's going on across the board is that there's a system being, like you just said, there's a system being built up that is basically going to be able to run in parallel with the legacy system, and then eventually those slowly start to come together, and they just mold into one large ecosystem where everything can interoperate. I know you guys have a good amount of wallets on there. Is there anything that you can say about potential additions of new wallets, new supported tokens or coins or partnerships, anything like that?
So we're always adding new tokens that you can send using your domain. There are some really good upcoming announcements, although nothing I can share quite yet. Happy to talk about what just happened this week, though, if you think that's a good thing to mention.
Are you talking about the OCC?
Gemini.
Oh, Gemini. Yeah, you guys. That was yesterday. I reported that on my channel yesterday. You guys had a partnership with Gemini yesterday. Feel free. I'm sure the community would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So you already broke the big news, but it's the first time that a cryptocurrency exchange has supported collectibles, has supported ERC 721s. And so you mentioned art, like digital art. So the most popular NFTs, digital collectibles right now, are domain names, art. There's a little bit of maybe some real estate tokens or whatever, but it's mostly art and domain names. And so these are now able to be stored inside of a professional cryptocurrency exchange, just like crypto. Because if you think about it, your domain name is, it sits inside of your wallet. You have to store your own keys. If you lose your keys, your domain name is gone.
Yeah.
And you have to decide, do I trust myself more, or do I trust an exchange more? And we think that a decent amount of people are going to say, I'd rather, at least temporarily, I would want to store it in an exchange. A lot of people do that with their Bitcoin or their Ripple or their Ethereum or whatever right now. So that's an important piece of the ecosystem, to have both options. And it's just a sign that, this asset class of NFTs is getting taken seriously.
No, I mean, I obviously collectibles, as far as crypto collectibles, are going to be on par with anything else in the future. It's just the way that things go. As far as Gemini is concerned, I'm not as familiar. I'm sure there's some sort of insurance similar to what Coinbase does. So if something were to happen, you're at least backed up to a certain extent.
Yeah. So they have a treasury, and they also have insurance. So that helps.
Now you guys, I know just from looking on the website too, you guys have a pretty large team from what I was looking through. Are you guys planning on, just with given the economy and everything right now, as far as funding is concerned, are you guys pretty well capitalized from a funding standpoint? I know that Draper Associates, you have grants from Ethereum and Zilliqa. Are you guys, I mean, with the economy and everything else, do you guys have any worries about where this goes, where the blockchain ecosystem goes? I mean,
so I have a lot of sympathy for what people are going through, kind of around the country and around the world. I guess fortunately, we're a digital business, and digital goods like domain names is actually a pretty good time, because people are sitting at home, people are reorienting their lives, people are the amount of things that everyone's doing digitally has gone up by 5x, just in the past 4 months.
Yeah.
So I think we're actually benefiting, as are a lot of crypto companies right now, just because people have a lot more time to do things, to use applications and stuff. So we've been growing a lot. We did raise money a year ago. We raised $4.3 million from Draper Associates, from Tim Draper. But we're kind of full steam ahead. We're growing our team a lot right now.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I mean, I usually don't talk about price or speculation on this channel, but I mean, as far as what you guys are doing and across the board, where do you see the next 12 months with digital assets, blockchain as a whole? Do you think we have more regulatory clarity? I don't know if you're in the know in any of that. You're more on the developer side, just trying to make moves. I get it, but I mean, you are involved in that space. So I mean, I'm sure you have a little bit more insight than most people do have that from a speculation standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not as good at the, I'm not in the loop in terms of any of the sort of regulatory stuff so much. Although, we talk to exchanges and companies like that every now and then. It does seem like in general, from a regulatory perspective, things are broadly speaking going in the right direction. That most of the agencies that would be relevant to crypto seem to be softening over time. And also, I think maybe more important for America, most of the major institutions are getting into crypto. And I think that's really what decides what the regulators do is, how do their bank friends feel about everything? And I think their banking friends are becoming a lot more pro crypto by the month. And I think that's how America actually makes their decisions. So that's a good sign for all of us. So I think probably the biggest bull signal I've seen was just a couple of days ago when they announced that any bank is allowed to be a crypto custodian. Any national bank is allowed to store crypto now.
Yeah.
So that means virtually any bank in America can now compete with Coinbase and Gemini, et cetera. And I mean,
it's very interesting. Brian Brooks is in there Brian Brooks has been in that position for like 2 months, and he came over from Coinbase, and that guy is making some moves.
That is a huge move, and it spreads crypto out across the entire country. It hits every population now, rather than just this hub of people in New York or just this hub of people in the West Coast, which is what it's been. Now it can just go everywhere.
What's going to be really interesting for me is that there's so many use cases across the board. You guys support very many of them as far as storage is concerned from crypto asset standpoint. It's going to be interesting. But I read the announcement that the OCC and Brian Brooks put out with what you just talked about. And at the very bottom, I mean, there's like a small little snippet that says, given technology, et cetera, it may not just end with storage. And we all know that it doesn't just end with storage. I mean, Ethereum is a monster with smart contracts across the board. I mean, this all comes down to utilization of digital assets. I mean, it just makes sense. If they're going to store them, they're eventually going to use them. And I think once the utility shines through, because we all know how much utility there is in the digital assets, I think it's a no-brainer. But I guess there was a question from Twitter, and I'm just curious because I know that just looking through, and again, you said Zaja, who's a member of your team, reached out to me late last night, so I was cramming all morning trying to look into you guys as much as possible. I do see there's two things with purchasing a .crypto domain that were interesting to me. Number one, you touched on it a little bit, and I would like to maybe get a little bit more into the centralization here after this question, but when you buy a domain name through this .crypto, you own it for life. From what I understand through reading through your website, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I know that there's a value based on the potential popularity of a domain name. Can you just, is there like I don't know if there's a rubric for calculating that, or is obviously like Bitcoin.crypto would be a valuable domain name, but some of the other ones, like, is there how do you guys base that decision? Yeah.
So this industry of launching domain registries is in the traditional world pretty, there's like a system around it. And so over the past 10 years, there's been a bunch of them. They haven't gotten very popular. So your fans might not have even heard of a lot of them, but there's like .icu and .club and a whole bunch of these domain registries in the traditional world. And they have these pricing models based on the popularity of domains, mostly with .com, but with others. And then you have like a system with, I think we have like 10 tiers or something like that. And so domains just fall into those tiers. They're one-time fee, so they're a little bit higher price than .coms, but the reason why is because you only pay one time. So, .crypto domains are $40. one time, and then the tiers go up from there. So it's a similar pricing model to a lot of traditional domain registries.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few crypto-y exceptions, but even like Bitcoin.com is a super valuable .com domain. So the crypto domains are already super valuable even in the traditional domain world. So it's basically how it would work in a traditional domain system. And that's kind of one of the things that's been animating a lot of customers early on, is they were around for the early .com. I bought a bunch of .com domains in the late 90s, with friends, because it was just, it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the things that's happening is people are looking back to like what worked in those days, and then trying to think through what would be some of the early businesses or websites or whatever on the decentralized web, and trying to back into what domains should I grab now based on that.
I think what a lot of people lack to understand, and many people may not have gotten into the legacy or the traditional domain name space, but I mean, I have personally, and it is it's a cluster. It's almost like when you go, like I went through GoDaddy, and it's almost like when you go and sign up for a cell phone, and there's you get your bill, and then there's all these additional, like, what is this charge for? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing on GoDaddy. You have to renew it, and it's even if it's 10 or 20 or $30, and you're doing that on a consistent basis, and there's all these little add-ons. We'll help you build a website. We'll help you build your website for an extra $20 or whatever, a month or whatever it ends up being. It gets pretty crazy. So it is very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense just to be able to purchase that domain name once, and then it's yours for life. And everything's basically right on the blockchain. You know what I mean? I am very interested in if you could dive a little bit more into what you've seen with censorship and everything else, because I know, like, I make YouTube videos, and there's definitely some issues as far as censorship on YouTube from what I've seen, people's channels getting shut down, etc.
Yeah, and this is something that I think it's a little obscure, so a lot of people don't realize how this domain part works. But there was a guy who bought France.com, and the French government decided that it should be theirs. And they had a big giant fight with him, and then they took it from him. And like, that's a generic term, and the guy had owned it for a long time. So, that's a sort of benign sounding one. But that happened when the Libyan government became a Islamist government. I think it was in 2015-ish. Mm-hmm. They started regulating porn sites using .ly, and .ly is like a cool sounding, extension that a lot of startups and some porn companies were using around the world, and those porn sites just started going down. Even if they're in Canada or whatever, it doesn't matter, because the Libyan government had enough control over the registry. They objected to it. There was an attempt by people in Catalonia to have an independence movement from Spain, and they had a registry that they were using to launch a bunch of websites, .cat, and the Spanish government raided the registry, shut it down, and arrested the employees, including the CTO. And it's gone. It was gone. So like, they were able to use this system, and this is in Europe. Like, we're talking about, those are European examples. Just imagine what's happening in authoritarian countries where either you're not allowed to publish at all, or in India, websites of Muslim political parties go down all the time. So that's the domain side. Now on the website side, it's just as bad or worse. You store your host, you have web hosting services. Turkey has a law that there's 150 words you can't post on any hosting service. One of them is gay. Another one of them is naked. So they are enforcing moral rules on the entire internet space in Turkey. And again, those are places where you're allowed to publish. Those are the rules. You get taken down if you break the rules, but you're allowed to publish it all without permission. In China, you need a license, essentially, to publish your website in the first place. So this system is really, really broken, and it's being used by some of the worst political powers in order to control people. The more benign versions in the US, like YouTube, are also really bad, because YouTube is in this powerful place where they're storing all of our videos. So you don't, maybe you have copies of your videos, but you don't control your videos online. They control them. They're sitting in YouTube's servers. And if YouTube doesn't like what you're doing, and in particular, they've been going after crypto people, dozens of crypto people have been going down, they can just take it down, and then you're gone. If YouTube is the only place you're on the internet, you're gone. And that's not how it's going to work in the future. In the future, you're going to store that video yourself. You're going to control it. It's going to be sitting on decentralized storage. No one can take that down other than you. And you'll say to YouTube, "Hey, YouTube, do you want to share this video with your community?" And if YouTube says no, you'll say, "Great, I'm going to go to YouTube number 2 and let them show it." But there's going to be 50 of them, not one of them that stores your content, and that's going to make you as a creator in the driver's seat. Whereas right now, they get to decide what's okay. And they do. And they destroy people's livelihoods with no explanation.
Yeah. That's crazy. Well, I'm posting this regardless, so whatever happens, happens. But, you know, what's very interesting to me, and I think I've definitely run through the questions here. I mean, I will end it with, you know, I don't think that people don't realize what they don't have until they have it. And you know, you see, I talk to plenty of people, like just normal people that have no idea about crypto, blockchain. I try to tell them about it, you know, but they're always wondering, like, even as simple, like from a cookies standpoint that happens, they're like, yeah, I was looking up lawnmowers and then I go on Facebook and there's all sorts of ads for lawnmowers. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're tracked everywhere you go on the internet. You know what I mean? That's how a lot of these companies make their money is through those cookies that generate what you want to see. Well, that's not going to be the case, you know, in the future where everything's completely decentralized and you literally will choose what you want to see and what you don't want to see across the board. And I think that goes the same thing with finance. It goes the same thing with decentralized internet, everything else. Once people realize what they didn't have and they get a taste of it, as far as speed, utility, lower fees, as far as, you know, blockchain and use cases for remittances, et cetera, and what you guys are trying to accomplish here. And it looks like you're pretty successful at it thus far. You know, it's just amazing where all this is heading. So, but
we're excited. I think the decentralized web is going to be bigger than the regular web, and you know, it works now. So there's no, you know, there's a long way to go. Like we're kind of like 1996 internet or something like that. You know, we're GeoCities level for those of you out there who, you know, was building websites in the 90s like me. You know, it's simple stuff. You know, you get your one little icon that'll move around on the screen. Everything else is text or whatever. We're close to that level. It's a little better than that, but we're close to that level. But it all works. And that tells us that, you know, over the next decade or two, we are going to be able to transition the internet to a system where users are in control. And we are going to be able to give users a choice where Facebook doesn't get access to all your data, where YouTube doesn't control all your videos, and where China and Russia and India can't just decide what you can publish and what you can't. And when we get those things, I think we're going to see all kinds of new use cases. We're going to see all kinds of new stuff, and we're going to see everybody able to capture more value that they're creating online than right now. Everybody should be able, you know, should essentially have a little internet small business.
Yeah.
Or the majority of people are going to have passive income from the things that they're doing online. And that's just not the case right now. Facebook gets that money.
Yep. Yeah, YouTube gets a ton of money. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I going to say? I think, and this really did inspire me, that you guys reached out to me yesterday. It makes me definitely think, you know, a lot of people that are in the digital asset space, a lot of people, you see all these initiatives going on across the board, you know, and everybody's like, yeah, this is great, but nobody signs up and is actually using, like, I'm not going to say nobody, but I'd love to see a lot more people get involved and actually use these platforms that are being built across the board here. I mean, it makes sense. That is really adoption. That is what's really going to build the network effect and cause a tipping point. But it's coming regardless, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree or not, but I think that we're all heading in the right direction here.
I think it's coming, and I think 2020 has been a good year. You know, 2019, I think there was maybe like 500 decentralized websites that we could find. As of right now, I think there's 20,000.
Wow.
So like there's been a huge growth just in 2020, and that's just in the decentralized web world. There's all kinds of other pieces of crypto that have also been growing really big in 2020. So I think we can all kind of feel it, you know, especially those of us who've been in it for a while. Like this, I think we're onto something right now.
I agree 100%. Well, do you have anything else for me, Brad?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, Brad, and thank you for. I know you're busy, and thank you guys for reaching out to me very much. Everybody, please check out Unstoppable Domains. The link's going to be down in the description of this video, and definitely sign up, play around a little bit with all these initiatives. You know, the PayID across the board. There's so many initiatives in there. Take a day and just look through them all. Unstoppable Domains is on here. Brad, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks much for having me.
Thanks, Brad.